Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Love Fruit podcast. This is another special interview that we have today. This time it's with Ellen Livingston. And Ellen is one of the most well-loved teachers at the Woodstock Fruit Festival and has been teaching there every year, I believe, since the very start. She's also one of the main yoga teachers there. And this is an opportunity for us to learn more about what Ellen does and her story. And I'm looking forward to learning more. So, Ellen, is there anything else you would like to say just at the start to introduce yourself, or tell us a bit about your background, maybe?
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for the chance to share my story here. I have been teaching at the Woodstock Fruit Festival since 2011, so that's been a real treat and a really great platform for me to share my message. People seem to think that I went raw overnight, about 17 years ago, but in truth, there was a really long journey to it. And when it appeared that I went overnight, it was because I was getting I found that information. I hear a lot of paper shuffling.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you'd picked that up so much. Maybe.
So for me, I'd say that what may be unique about me is that the spiritual journey and the health journey on my path have been always completely inseparable. So even though I would say I thought I was going on a raw food diet for health reasons, because I had plenty of health challenges that I can share here with your listeners, but really the spiritual journey started powerfully first for me.
Yeah.
And, I guess that's true for a lot of us. And, even as a child, I really delighted in my healthy, physical, athletic body. And I was super active and athletic. And at the same time, I loved the quiet solitude of my artistic and musical talents. And it's taken me a long time to learn that I'm actually what somebody on TED Talks termed an ambivert. I have kind of an equal tendency toward extroversion and introversion. And so that's been part of my spiritual journey, is to learn to balance that in the world, because I've also learned I'm a really sensitively wired nervous system. And so, as many of your listeners probably know, raw foods make us even more sensitive. And so that's kind of piqued both my health journey and my spiritual journey.
That's really interesting to me. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but what's interesting is, my question to you is, do you think that when someone that basically it's what you're talking about is it's a growing awareness and a kind of self-discovery? What I mean by that is, like, as people start maybe to go down a spiritual path and become, as you're saying, like, they might become more sensitive, more aware of things, and more aware of how food affects their body and things like that. Do you think that's part of it, or?
Yeah, it still is an ongoing discovery process for me, trying my curiosity to decipher what causes what and which comes first. But, the fact that I am sensitively wired, I think about 15 or 20% of the population is like this. We're just born with a little bit differently tuned nervous system. And so I because of that, I may be a little bit more hyper aware of all the changes going on in my body, which might make me more aware of something off in my health sooner than somebody else. On the other hand, my spiritual path just makes me more sensitive as well. And so, it's hard to say. I do know that also as a child, when I was about 12, I had a kind of a revelatory experience where I just came into an awareness one day suddenly that it actually was tipped off by a report card where I had gotten straight A's as usual. And my mother had taken me down to a department store to use those straight A's to get discounts on sheets and towels. For every A that your child got, you could get a little bit more percentage off of the sheets and towels. And there was something about that experience that sent me into an awareness that there was something funny about, the motivation behind the work I was doing. And it really made me aware that I wasn't doing it for me somehow, that I worked hard and I knew how to do the system and I knew how to get the A's and I knew how to be a good girl, but I wasn't happy there. And I recognized that, what I perceived of as my parents' kind of expectations of success in the world was different than what I just wanted to be happy and feel connected. And I felt disconnected in that moment of recognizing, that maybe I wasn't doing this for me. And my whole life path since then has been a slow and sometimes just amazing and blissful and sometimes tortuous, circuitous journey toward reclaiming, my ability to live from my own authenticity and to do things for what I really want and for what really feels true to me. And
Yeah.
as people know, in this raw food movement, it's not an easy thing to buck the system, and I've done a lot of bucking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, but it's intertwined with my health, and that is my spiritual journey, and that is my health journey. When I'm not living authentically, my body doesn't work right. So it's all, inextricably intertwined. But I do remember some shifts starting with that revelation. And I kind of went into a bit of depression at that point, probably for the next decade at least, sometimes medicated. I started to have reckless behavior, a lot of partying in high school, and a lot of not caring about things, but still getting the straight A's, still being a good girl. But finally, all that recklessness led to a severe accident skiing when I
Oh,
was a
wow.
senior in high school, and I completely shredded my left knee, which has been something to deal with for the rest of my life. And it was a real turning point because I suddenly couldn't take my health and my athletic body for granted anymore. I had a year and a half of intensive physical therapy, and I got to hang out with people in wheelchairs and people who were much worse off than me, and things I just hadn't thought about before. And I was still only 18. So I was really waking up to some of the challenges in life. And then I went off to college and I began to have health problems. And so to this day, again, I don't know how to put the cart before the horse or which way, what order things caused each other. But because I was on a painful spiritual journey at that point too, trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted and where I was going. And I was feeling a bit lost. And at the same time, my physical health had taken a big hit. And so it was a long process then of trying to sort through all of that. And I had migraine headaches and severe insomnia and the depression, and then spinal problems that probably came from that accident. And TMJ, the jaw, thing that caused the headaches, and then I began to have digestive problems. And to make a long story short, that's what sent me into exploring nutrition. I'd never thought about it all that much. But when my digestive system started to not work right, I went to doctors and was repeatedly told that it had no connection to what I was eating. And at some point, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, this so didn't make sense to me that I began to stop going to those doctors and just start reading on my own and exploring. And I read every book on nutrition I could get my hands on. And so began about a 20-year journey of trying different ways of eating. And it led me in many directions toward vegetarian and vegan, and finally the Dr. McDougall diet, which was a kind of, no overt fats, no oils, but a grain-based cooked vegan diet.
Yeah.
And from there, I guess a chiropractor gave me the Harvey Diamond's Fit for Life book. And that was my first introduction to natural hygiene. And it wasn't long after that somebody gave me one of David Wolfe's books, and I stayed up all night, read that whole book. So when people say I went raw overnight, I did, but the stage was so set. When I got a hold of that book, it was like light bulbs going off. And I called the number on the back of the book the next morning, and David Wolfe didn't answer, but there was somebody else who did, and they set me up with a long distance coach from California. And he put me on a juice fast, and I've been raw ever since. It took me another year to find 80-10-10. So, there was a little bit of a rocky road at first because I felt better, but I lost too much weight and I was sort of emaciated trying to live on vegetables.
Right.
And then I met Doug Graham and his wife Rosie came to Ohio, just 3 hours from my house, and I went and met them and signed up. I went back the next day for a 6-hour consult with Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I turned it around and got on a fruit-based approach. I never could eat the fatty foods because my gallbladder didn't function. And so I never went down the high-fat, raw, gourmet route.
Right.
I was always on the low-fat route, but in the beginning it was vegetables, and I would eat like a horse and still lose weight. But that didn't work. But I knew I was onto something because I felt so much better. I just didn't look so good until I got on the fruit, and then everything started to come into better balance with the diet, and symptoms started to just fall away.
And what was the event you went to in Ohio? Was it just a talk?
Yeah, somebody who lived there somehow knew of Doug and had invited him into her home. Or was their home or her church or something like that. And it was a fairly small group of, maybe 30 or 50 people.
Uh-huh.
We had a potluck dinner and listened to them talk.
That's great, yeah.
I brought my husband at the time with me, hoping that he would be impressed. And he wasn't. He didn't see the light. He didn't want to go there. He just, he at one point after that had told me, wherever you're going, I'm not going there with you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so people ask me if my raw journey led to divorce, and yes and no. I think it was coming anyway, but it might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, because it was evidence of my really deep commitment to a spiritual path and an enlightenment path and a health path. And these were the things I cared most about at that point. And mostly because I had lost a lot of my health. And for anyone who's been there, the idea of continuing to be suffering at that level is more painful than what it takes to be healthy.
Yeah. And I was wondering, do you remember much about what happened with that consult with Rosalind? Do you remember what you went over, or what particularly?
Well, I remember that, she weighed me and we talked about what I was eating and how I was feeling. And, the end result of it was she wanted me to juice about 8 to 10 oranges a day in the morning and put the pulp back in and just get some calories in me.
Yeah.
It was really a calorie deficit was all it was.
Right.
And so it was just some retraining to learn the calories. And after that point, I did go through about maybe 6 months of kind of weighing my food and figuring out from a little chart in a book. I didn't even go online, but how much calories, like say an orange or a mango had. And I tried to figure it out so that I could, get at least 2,000 calories a day.
Sure.
And after a while, you start to just know how many calories are in each of those things, and I didn't have to pay attention anymore. But I definitely had a recovery to do.
Right. Do you see that as a challenge for a lot of people when starting off with raw foods?
That they need to get it into balance, or that they need to gain weight?
That they don't eat enough, or they're scared to eat enough.
Yeah, it's a huge pitfall. And I think that it's one of the things that I work on with most of my clients when they try to, go to all raw. They generally don't take in enough calories unless they're really paying attention. And for some people, that's okay for a little while because they have a lot of weight to lose anyway, and they're not very hungry because they're cleansing. And so it doesn't concern me too much at first.
Yeah.
But sometimes it leads to an imbalance of cravings if they're not getting enough of the good fruit carbohydrates. And so then we have to take a look at that right away, so it doesn't sabotage their journey to raw, right?
So what was the journey then from that point to starting to teach about raw yourself and help other people and writing a book and things like that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. It did not happen right away. I was so focused on myself because I had such an intense health journey to recover from. And then had 3 small children and went through a divorce when the youngest was only 4. So they were 4, 7, and 10. So then there I was, parenting 3 kids and trying to figure out how to make a living and how to make money. And I just had to survive for a while there. And so it was 5 years that I was all raw before I was ever really teaching or coaching anybody else. I was having potlucks. I started potlucks at my house every month. I put a sign up in my local food cooperatives and health food stores, and 3 people showed up at the first one. And pretty soon I had a little potluck following. And it wasn't about me getting clients or making money or anything. It was just about me finding community.
Yeah.
And bringing people together. And so I opened up my home every month, and a lot of regulars started coming, and they were desperate for this because there was nobody else who was doing it in my town, and certainly nobody who was doing it in the sort of high fruit, low fat way that I was doing it. And so that was fun. And I did that. And I had a couple of friends who finally started pushing me to kind of, get on stage, so to speak. They said, people need you to be teaching. And I kept saying, but I'm not ready. I'm not perfect yet. I'm not all the way healed. I don't have it all figured out. And they said, well, yeah, but you need to get out there now because people need what you have to say. And they really convinced me that I was holding back and that I was keeping people from the information they needed. So I started to offer some classes in my home. For many years, I taught in my home. I brought in some people. I brought Don Bennett to my home, and we did workshops together. I brought Doug Brown to my home twice. We had one event with 150 people that he led in my hometown. And so then we did another intensive advanced workshop with about 50 people. And so that was all helping me to kind of be seen and grow into my own shoes. I finally, was able to see myself as that caliber of teacher. And so I got my yoga certification at one point. And then I began coaching, speaking. I started offering monthly, or actually 3 times a month, free talks in my town. Just at health food stores, and I started writing articles and publishing them in the local magazines, and so people started to notice me. I was the only one in my whole town of 150,000 people doing this.
Wow.
Doing it publicly like this at first, and there's a few others now, but I'm the only one who has steadily done it all these years, and so I am thought of as like the raw guru in my town. I'm not sure I like that title, but I'm the one who's been steadily doing it. So
can I just ask what that town is?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
And are you still running that group and running those talks and things?
Yeah, so it's been an evolution. I also had another whole chapter in there that was kind of running simultaneously with all this raw food and yoga development in my life, which was that I was mothering my kids and I was unschooling them. So when I got a divorce, they had only known homeschooling. And despite the fact that the lawyer and my parents and my ex-husband were all trying to convince me that I had to go to work full time and put the kids in school full time, and that was the only way to make it now, I didn't. Something rose up in me that didn't want to go there. And I continued the homeschooling, and I started something called the Sunnyside Learning Center, where we invited other homeschooling families into our home, and I took care of the kids a few days a week with my kids. We kind of ran a family business together in the home. And so I had this home that was, like a center for the homeschoolers and the raw potlucks and the yoga classes in the living room and the, seminars on the weekends sometimes. It was, and at the same time, I was also working part-time as an art therapist at a hospice. And it was an incredibly busy time where it was very productive, and I was probably running on fumes. Thank God I was on a fruit-based diet because I had the energy to mostly keep up with all of that.
Yeah.
And so eventually I let go of the learning center as the kids got older, and I had more time to focus more on getting adults some help with their health. And so I got back into more of the coaching and teaching, and I began to run retreats. And so now people know of my Costa Rica retreats, but before that I was running weekend retreats in Michigan or northern Michigan, and I ran a few retreats in southern Florida. And started small and right about the time that Woodstock Fruit Festival evolved, was when I also started my Costa Rica retreats.
Excellent.
And so all of that started, and that's still what I do now is I do the Costa Rica retreats. I'm now developing, let's see, about the last 7 years, I've been developing something I call the Living Heart Sanctuary in Ann Arbor, which I show during the Woodstock Fruit Festival. I do a Dream Builder talk and I share this project, and I have a community of about 10 adults living there, and some of us in tiny houses. And we have a communal garden, and we have a big 30-foot yurt where we have various yoga teachers coming in, and kirtan chants, and meditation groups, and
Oh, wow.
drum circles. And, you know, I don't advertise it. It's just people find out about it in my community and they want to do their thing in the yurt. So it's a community gathering space that I've just kind of, it's been one of my, some of my seva on this planet, I guess, has been to bring people together and to sort of vision and create spaces where people can gather in healthy spiritual and health kinds of ways. So again,
Yeah.
I see it coming full circle, that journey of mine that was always spiritual and around health came together, and that's still what I do and share both.
Have you got any kind of lessons you've learned from the building of these communities that you've done and putting on the potluck groups and things? For other people that might be interested in doing that, do you have any kind of tips or advice on how to effectively kind of grow those communities?
Sure, I do. Again, my Dream Builder talk at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, when I was designing that talk, I was thinking about, you know, what are like some of the primary processes that go on in the mind of somebody who's able to take a pure vision and bring aspects of it into reality. Like, who do you have to be to get that out on the map? And there's a lot of characteristics, and one of them is not caring what other people think and just really believing in your vision, no matter how different it looks, no matter how crazy it sounds to some people, no matter you know, what people might say about it. Protect it, hold the torch, share it with supportive people, don't worry about the other people, and just keep going step by step. And I think one of the hardest lessons for me was I often go too fast and bite off a little too much, and then I find myself having to backpedal a little bit because it gets you know, so much bigger than me. And so learning how to bring in support, learning how to share and enroll others in your vision so that you're not doing it alone, that's been a key factor in the communities I've been creating. I'm creating another one now in Florida, in Englewood, Florida. It's a cute little beach town, and my partner and I have like a 1 acre little property here with a tiny cabin on it, and we're working towards it being a space we can share with other raw vegans who want to come and spend time down here. And
Wow.
so part of the thing also is to think about yourself in the process as you're dream building, so that it isn't just a creation for everybody else, but wraps you into a beautiful place as well. So that you get to have fun and get what you want. Then you'll have a lot more energy overflowing toward helping other people. So I've always, even with that Sunnyside Learning Center I set up for the kids, we got to spend money on wonderful art materials and things like that for the business, and then we got to enjoy them ourselves. And so in that same vein, I now get to spend my winters in Florida, and I'm creating a space that generates income to allow me to make that a sustainable path for me. So a long time ago, I met Frederick Patenaude and went to one of his retreats in Costa Rica. And he had us write a life statement. And this was like 15 or 16 years ago, I wrote a life statement for myself that really still fits me, I think. I said, I'm a beacon of love and light and truth for others, as I joyously live and share my dreams of health and freedom.
Wow.
It was me saying that I'm willing to take that, to step into that leadership calling. I can see that it's a natural thing for me to do. I can see that it's important for me to do this. And I'm not going to be a martyr. I'm not going to give up my dreams of health and freedom. So I'm going to bring those two together and find out how I can be the beacon simply by living and sharing my path, so that I'm still getting to do it. I think that as leaders, we are our best advertisement by being as healthy as we can be and as happy, by
Absolutely.
allowing ourselves some of the joy of right living. And then just, I can't help it. It bubbles out of me. I want to share it. I don't want to hide all this wonderful lifestyle from other people. I mean, it's tempting sometimes when you get overwhelmed to retreat to your own living basis, right? Just do your thing. But ultimately, it's a lot more fun to share it.
Let's talk about retreats a little bit. You just mentioned the one with Fred, and it obviously you offer retreats, but it's quite clear that you've been to them yourself as well. So you know the benefit of going as an attendee. Can you talk about what's the importance or the benefits of retreats that you would not get from any other type of experience?
Well, obviously, there's the benefit of getting away from your everyday stresses and responsibilities at home. I mean, ultimately, it's nice to create a life that you're not trying to escape from. But even if you love your life, there's still benefit in stepping out for a moment and getting some perspective and getting a change of pace and a different pace of lifestyle. So when we're on retreat, things move slower. And I try to create a beautiful environment for people so that that's not a stressful thing, right? The climate is good. The water is clean, the air is clean. All of these things help facilitate just feeling good and sleeping better. And then we try to create optimal as possible diet and food choices. So everybody's cleansing in a way that many people who come on my retreats, if not nearly all of them, have trouble creating that as well at home.
Yeah.
And so just to be in an environment where everybody's doing this and nobody's looking at you funny, and there are no other options really. It's all laid out for you. It's very easy. It's all you want. You don't think about the other path when you are immersed. So I think of it as like immersion therapy, right?
Yes.
To start every day together in communal yoga practice. And we laugh, we play, we get serious. On my retreats, we're including yoga as well as just playful movement in the outdoors, like jumping in waterfalls and splashing in the ocean and just generally playing, but also spending some serious time in life coaching group. So we get together and we do artwork together, we write poetry together. My partner brings that into the mix, and just get the creative juices flowing, because I find it's like if we can tap into other languages like art and poetry and movement, then people get out of their heads and into their hearts and into their bodies, and it frees up energy that's just been blocked because we've been so just in our normal mode of thinking and talking and trying to logically solve things. And so the creative expression and just freeing that up, and the childlike playfulness is a huge piece of my retreats, of helping people just come into themselves, into their authentic forgotten selves. And once they do that, then my real goal is to help them also kind of reclaim their own knowing, because I think what's so lost for people is they're just they're sort of zombie-like, going from workshop to workshop and expert to expert, writing down all this information, but not really integrating it with their own inner knowing. And so trying to find all the ways I can to help people reconnect through nature, through their bodies, through creative expression, through community, to reconnect with what is true for them and the wisdom that they already have, but they maybe don't remember how to trust it or how to access it even.
Yes.
And then they can take information that they hear, and they have a better discernment process for deciding whether it rings true for them or not. It's not just based on, does it feel right in my body, but deeper than that. When I really think for myself, does it make sense?
Yeah.
I really think about it. and I really am connected to what is natural and what feels natural and what makes sense, then I have a better way of deciding if it's something I want to try on.
Mm-hmm.
So the retreats are so much about, connection, I would say, at all those levels, reconnecting.
Yeah, I think what I was kind of picking up from what you're saying is the idea that people tend to be in a little bit of a routine and a pattern in life. And it seems like a retreat is a good way to get out of that pattern, reevaluate life, and hopefully kind of foster a transformation so that, and really people often don't get that time out to actually, like you're saying, write down what it is you want to do in your life and how you want it to go forward and everything. And so it gives you time to focus on that with other people who are doing the same thing. It seems like transformation is a big aspect of it, perhaps.
Yes, thank you. I didn't say that word, but that's definitely a good word for what my work and my retreats are about. And that transformation comes about, it's like we're sort of speeding up the process by creating a place where people can access that transformation, because we slow things down, quiet things down, get you away from all the other distractions, and then, give you tools and activities and exercises to facilitate you getting in touch with. Sometimes I give people an assignment with a piece of art, to draw, what is it that you would really love? And if somebody gets stumped with that blank piece of paper and does not know what to put on it, and does not know what they really want, then I say, well, I bet you know how you want it to feel.
Right.
Let's make some art about that. Let's put some colors down. What is it how is it that you would love your life to feel?
That must be a challenge for a lot of people as well, who maybe aren't as artistic. I don't know, but.
Well, that's actually better if you're
not.
Not.
Right. Well.
Right, because if you think of yourself as artistic, then you might be really perfectionistic about what you're putting on.
Yeah.
But if you just free everybody to just throw down colors and be like a kid and play and don't worry about the outcome. It's not about what it looks like. It's about the process of just unleashing this creativity. And they love it, and in fact, when we go on, the next part of my Costa Rica retreat is now a 2-part retreat. And there's a kind of deeper, more advanced section at another farm next door the second week. And they prompted me to bring the artwork, bring the art materials, please. We want to do more.
Oh, great.
And then they just do it on their own. It's like they haven't drawn or gone barefoot or written poetry since they were little kids.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Right, and so it's amazing what that can bring up for people, just unleashing that in a relaxed way.
Amazing, yeah. That's a brilliant point.
It's simple. I remember having a women's group on my property in Michigan, and this was not about raw foods. It was just a women's group, and we took turns facilitating the group. And so when it was my turn, I said, okay, we're just going to do a barefoot walk all the way around the trails on my land, and then we'll come back and have a campfire. And when we got back to the fire, they were speechless. Nobody could say anything because the experience was so profound for them of just walking in silence with no shoes on the pine needles and the moss and the grass, and then coming and sitting around a fire was so primal that it was just kind of stunned everybody. I was blown away by that because I had sort of lost touch with how new that was for people. Because I've been doing it naturally for so long, it was nothing to me to walk barefoot. I suggested it only because I thought it would be a nice way to connect us. I didn't realize how profound it was going to feel to people who, literally had not taken their shoes off outdoors since they were kids.
Yeah, it's quite amazing that. And I remember I remember being I was working in this place, and the lady beside me had osteoporosis. And she was talking, and I would say, we would talk about various things, and she would say she couldn't do exercise classes because she might fall over, or she couldn't do, different types of dance or whatever because she might fall and obviously break a bone or something. But she was still wearing like high heel shoes and stuff like that, and I just thought, it seemed really strange to me that the idea that something that would actually help your balance and coordination is something she was avoiding. But but people are so connected with their shoes, they don't even think that that could be a problem at all, or that could be, it's just kind of funny. But
it could cause the fall that they're dreading.
yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like I felt like I kind of thought, why wouldn't she have the flattest shoes possible, or like the most barefoot shoes possible, But maybe she didn't see it that
Well,
way, It's kind
as I've gotten older, and I'm in my mid 50s now, and as I've gotten older, I've become more sensitive to other people who are getting older and need a gentler approach. And so, you know, the things I used to just push people into, I am gentler now. We take the yoga a little easier. I had several people on my retreat this winter who had knee and hip replacements,
oh
and
wow,
just to get them, on a rocky path and climbing over some boulders was a huge challenge for some of them. And so we had to be really sensitive, because otherwise they'll just back away in fear. So to find ways of making yoga and trail walking accessible to people who have some physical deficits or handicaps is something that I really feel empathy for those people. I think because of what I've struggled with my knee that doesn't work right, which has affected my hips and my spine. And, so I have that empathy for people who don't have a perfect physical experience, right? But still can get out and enjoy nature and physical life more than they realize.
yeah,
And it's beautiful to free that up in them and to help them just see. We had one example of somebody with two hip replacements on the retreat this year who got off of all her ibuprofen after a few days raw, after about 5 or 6 days raw, and was able to get back to the activities she loved of hiking just by getting the inflammatory foods out of her diet.
wow.
And being in an environment where she was walking every day. So she was kind of recovering that ability. So there's no telling what can happen. And I have learned, and I think anyone who wants to run retreats needs to really give some deep thought to the purpose of your retreat, because I have other colleagues who might make theirs more of an adventure retreat. And I've learned over the years that mine really wants to be more of a kind of healing emphasis. And so we forego some of the bigger adventures, because a lot of the people who come on my retreat who are in need of a lot of healing are not ready for, climbing the tallest mountain or jumping off the biggest cliff. They're just not ready for that. And it divides the group. And so I have learned to focus on a more inclusive, gentler approach that focuses on the healing that everybody has access to. And there's nothing wrong with an adventure retreat. It's just good to be clear which kind of retreat you're actually aiming for.
Yeah,
You'll attract the right people for that.
absolutely. So I kind of thought there as well that a retreat is a place I like to focus on something, and that'll help accelerate actually your ability to do that thing or change to that thing. Because I think a lot of people in raw foods and everything, they're doing it, they're learning about it for years and years and years, and actually about any topic or anything. It could be yoga, it could be anything. They might learn about it for years or look into it and do books and look at courses, but to actually make that change seems like a retreat would be a really great place to focus and really accelerate that change within you.
I think it is, and I try to offer support post-retreat to help people continue some of the changes they've started making. So I had a call yesterday with a lady who was on my retreat, and she had purchased my yoga DVD of me, leading a home practice, and she was thrilled that she was doing it every day in her living room after the retreat and kind of keeping it going, what she had started on the retreat. So I look for ways to facilitate that. I did write a book, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, that I wrote initially just as a handbook from my students. I sell it on my website, but it's it's required reading before people go on my retreats or coach with me. because I want them to kind of get that out of the way, have the basics kind of in their head, and then
Mm-hmm.
we, dive in deep and focus a little bit more on applying it, right? So that's the thing about a retreat. We're not just studying, we're actually in active application every minute of every day, living this way, seeing what it really feels like, because until you really do it, and you can do it at the Woodstock Fruit Festival as well, be an environment where you're actually living it every day, and watching other people who know how to do it. And they're always so curious about, what am I eating on the retreat or at Woodstock? How does Ellen make her meal? And I don't want them to imitate me, but I do see that I'm serving as an example of what it might look like in real life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
off the pages of the book, and watching people who are really doing it is so important for people who are trying to learn.
So let's talk about Woodstock. How did that happen? When did you hear about that, and how did you become one of the teachers there?
Well, the way I know it, I knew Don Bennett and Dr. Sam, and somehow they, or one of them, knew Michael Arnstein, and he was putting out a call for educators, and I was recommended by my friends. And so I got in on that first year, and we all loved it, so we just kept coming. So I've been coming every year. So I was one of what they called the original pioneers, and now it has expanded to include a bigger group of educators, which I think is a good thing. And I'm always excited to see how it evolves every year. Over the years, I sort of found my niche there by right away the first year. I recognized that it seemed like there was a conversation missing at the festival about the emotional and spiritual journey people were experiencing. There was plenty of information to be had about how to do the diet, or how to exercise right, and do those kind of healthy lifestyle practices. But there wasn't a lot of conversation about what people were going through emotionally and socially and spiritually, and what was going on for them. And I would, find people kind of lost at the festival, crying in the corner, not knowing how to handle it all. And so I started offering support groups, and I started a series of talks covering the emotional and spiritual journey, and how to be grounded on this path, and how to cultivate your resilience, how to deal with the outside world, how to strengthen your inner guidance system, how to strengthen your ability to be in commitment to something.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things, because you can get all the knowledge you want about the diet and the exercise, but you're not going to be able to sustainably reproduce that in your own life unless and until you have some kind of support or ability to deal with the emotional and spiritual journey that's unfolding, because it's complex, right? And it's kind of rocks your boat kind of to the core, and you feel literally raw emotionally, trying to deal with all the cleansing that's happening in the body, and the whole chemistry of your whole being changes. And if you don't know what's going on or how to manage that, it scares most people away from the path, I think.
It can be quite a difficult thing to deal with. I mean, I think that a lot of people are dealing really with adapting to not having a lot of their crutches like caffeine and things like that, and maybe salt, and maybe, I don't know, sugar and things. I don't know.
Definitely. They're letting go of all kinds of things, and maybe before they were ready. I do think it's an individual approach, and some people need to go gradually and some people can go quickly, but figuring out how to do that, or what's going to be the best way for you, is a critical process. And to that end, I do offer one-on-one mentoring with people throughout the year, and I usually work with people for 6 months to a year or more. I find that somewhere around the 5 to 7 month mark, as we start to look at all these things and work on their own process of getting to know themselves again, and what's going to be the best path for them, somewhere around 5 to 7 months, there's kind of an internal shift that just takes place.
Oh, wow.
And I see it, they see it, they feel it. And from that point onward, some of some of it just starts to come to them naturally, right? Like for example, I had a woman who came to one session around 6 months and said, I don't believe it. I just don't hate myself anymore. I don't know where it went, but it's just not there anymore. It's just not there anymore. I just don't hate myself anymore. She wasn't quite able to say I love myself, but I don't hate myself anymore. And from that point on, her relationships got better. Her commitment to her raw path got better. It was like, she had a new lens that was now coming naturally to look at herself differently.
Do you think that people that can sabotage them when it comes to a healthy lifestyle is actually how they feel about themselves?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And so I, in the one-on-one work, we can really look at that because it's a safer place, even than a retreat. A retreat we can begin to, but the one-on-one process allows people to really be vulnerable and gradually open up some of the deeper traumas of their life. And I'm not practicing as a therapist. I am trained as one originally, but I think there's a difference between mentoring and or coaching and actual therapy. Some of my clients are also seeing a therapist, and others we can work on it in the present tense. I'm not about really so much dredging up the past or trying to resolve all of what happened in the past. We acknowledge that people had a past that may have had some trauma, but in my work as a mentor and a coach, it's more like, okay, so however you got here, where are you now? And where do you want to go from here? And let's be right here, right now, and look at what you've got. What tools do you have? What's your belief system? What's running the show for you? What's your way of looking at things? And what would you like to shift about that? And who do you need to be, allow that shift to happen? And how could you make what you want welcome rather than trying to forcefully make it happen? How could you just learn to hold the kind of vibration that makes it welcome?
Yeah.
And so we work on that, and it's a really positive approach that helps people immediately start to feel more empowered, and then gradually start to, just naturally, easily live from that more empowered place. It takes a few months to get that really set in somebody, right? To help them have the tools and start using them and see how they work and see that they can do it. And then they just wake up one day and things are starting to feel different. The way they're thinking about things is starting to be different. They're starting to be able to catch themselves sabotaging themselves with negative thoughts and turn it around quicker, and recognize the power they have to choose a brighter path. I had a mantra that I found when I got my divorce. I found it in a magazine, and it was so compelling to me that I ripped it out and hung it on my kitchen cabinet, and it was there for 8 years, and it said, "Turn your face to the sun and the shadows fall behind you." And it sounds so simple, but it transformed me because it just was a reminder, that I had the power to choose the light and to choose to keep heading in that direction and to not get lost in the negative thoughts about myself or my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really sabotages people's energy and drive and ability to commit to a life affirming, health affirming path, right? If you're constantly thinking, I can't do this, or this is too hard, or I'm not, going to be able to pull this off, or any of those kind of thoughts, it doesn't help.
Yeah, this is really bringing into focus the idea for me about when I think about looking back over my own kind of path towards raw food. There has been that part of it as well, of learning to think more positively about yourself, or learning to respect yourself more, and the spiritual path as well, of being more aware of things. And it kind of makes me think about what it kind of takes to actually commit to 100% or commit to a very healthy diet at least, and sacrifice all those other foods and other experiences. And it does seem that a person needs to be very clear on some of the things that you're talking about, like having a kind of awareness and maybe a spiritual awareness on top of that, and having that real good relationship with themselves as well. So I'm really thankful for you to bring these things up, because it really makes it's a bigger picture than just getting the information right.
It really is. And I mean, I guess that came out of my own experience of, for me, it was all of that bigger picture. And the hardest part for me was not the food. You know, I was so sick and tired of feeling sick and tired that I honestly, when I adopted the raw diet, I was ready to eat nothing but, you know, carrots or bananas for the rest of my life, if that's what I had to do. And it would make me feel good every day. It was worth it to me. And not everybody's reached that point, but that was not the hard part for me. The hard part was not the food. It was dealing with the emotional and spiritual journey. And when I say spiritual, I know people don't always know what that means. And I give a talk about it at the Woodstock Fruit Festival, but I think it's especially fascinating in light of a raw food path, because I think it kind of automatically rockets us toward a deeper, what I would call spiritual connection with the bigger picture of the energy that kind of runs the universe, which I think of as a loving, benevolent force. But by eating nature's foods, and only nature's foods, and getting out into the sunshine and living outdoors more, and these things come naturally once you start living on mostly fruit. I mean, I don't know if this was your experience, Ronnie, but I started to seek out the sun more, to seek the out of doors more, to kick off my shoes more often, to take off my clothes more often. I just eating fruit and cleansing my body in that way made me automatically have, you know, more finely tuned antenna for the connection to, which I call a spiritual connection to the living force, right? To the thing that I'm a part of, the bigger thing. And I have found other ways to connect as well through yoga, meditation, and particularly my favorite practice is probably kirtan, which is a call and response mantra chanting, beautiful, blissful kind of music that we do in community. And so we do a lot of that in my yurt at home. I'm kind of missing it right now in Florida, but kirtan is a way of just kind of opening up into a very heart-centered, prayerful kind of music, and connecting your voice with other voices, and just being in that space where you forget all thought and time, and you're just present in that experience of joy, of tapping into that natural joy. And so that's been a lot of the spiritual path for me, has been allowing myself and putting myself in situations that naturally tap into that natural inner joy that I think we all are born with, that you feel when you walk barefoot or play in the water or sing with other people or dance, or you know, for me, that's the spiritual path of being in that connection. And the other piece of that that's been really powerful for me in the last few years is something that's been brewing for a long time, and I was finally able to give it more expression, is to simplify my life, my outer life, by how I live. And so I've given up all regular housing at this point and most of my belongings, and I live part of the year in Michigan in a 200 square foot yurt with no running water and mostly solar power. And it's in a really natural setting. And then I'm now living in Florida in a similar kind of situation, kind of sleeping in a little camper. And I have a little indoor room that we've just put a sink there. So I do have some running water, but spending most of my time outdoors, getting into a warmer climate so that I can do that. And I had to wait for my children to launch because they didn't really want to do that kind of tiny house living.
Sure.
I had threatened it many times over the years, and they had funny comments like, you know, if you make us live in a shed, I'm moving in with Dad when I turn 16. You know, or I'm not living in a house made of sticks and mud, Mom, so just stop, you know. So I didn't want to push them too far, so I waited. And I gradually moved into simpler and simpler environments, but didn't really go full throttle until my last one left for college last summer. So it's still a new part of my path, but very exciting, and I see it evolving, and it allows me to spend less on living, and so it gives me more time to myself, which is, you know, very joyful to me, because I haven't worked for somebody else for, gosh, probably 26 years now.
Wow.
And I don't know that I could anymore, actually. I so treasure my autonomy and my free agent lifestyle. And I, I like to share and be of service and do my work in the world, but I protect my ability to rest and play and have a break. And, I don't see clients until later in the morning because I don't like to jump out of bed and start interacting like that. And I protected my ability to decide my own schedule. And I think that's really important. And I encourage my clients to find ways to do that as well, because it's a part of, claiming your time and your life
Yeah,
as yours.
yeah, absolutely. Um, well, how about we talk about the spiritual path then? What does that look like to you in terms of, do you have specific daily practice, or how did you get into all that, and how did yoga become part of that?
Mm-hmm. That's been an interesting process too. That wasn't a straight path. Yoga came into my life when I was 19, and I had just had that big skiing accident, and things had changed for me, and suddenly I was slowed down. I couldn't do the activities for a while that I used to do, and I started looking to other things. I was going to college and then dropping out of college and then going back to college and going through a lot of stuff, and yoga kind of became a lifeline. I don't know what prompted me to take my first class, but it was beautiful for me because it allowed my strong connection already with a physical athletic body to be united with a practice that also got me into my heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allowed me to just like drop away all the roles and responsibilities and ideas about myself and identities, and just come into that core essential nature and kind of find the peace in coming home to that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was a lifeline in just helping me make peace with myself and what I really am and who I really am beneath all of the strivings and achievements. And because I was very achievement oriented, coming from a family that expected that and that promoted that and rewarded that, and yoga gave me a rest from that. It was just a place to be qualified to be on this planet just because I am,
Right.
not because I produce, not because I achieve, but just because I am. And so that was incredibly healing for me. And from there, I explored many different spiritual paths and attended Quaker meetings and Siddha yoga, and went to the Zen temple and tried on Buddhism and just sort of studied and tried a bunch of things. And what I ultimately found, much like in the rest of my life, is that I tend to be very interesting mix of community minded, but also independent. And so I was never able to really sit perfectly well with any path that required a lot of strict practices and rules. So my meditation does not look like, sitting for an hour at a certain time of day. It's not like that at all. It's more like a mindfulness practice that goes throughout the day. And I do have a yoga practice that does not happen at the same time every day, but it generally happens before I start the rest of my activities. So in the morning, usually. And I do a lot of sort of barefoot walking meditation whenever I get a chance. I do the kirtan chanting whenever I get a chance, which is usually 2 or 3 times a month at home. But I don't have any kind of set of sort of spiritual obligations, or any particular set pattern, other than to spend some time every morning, because that's a nice quiet time before the day starts to roll. Just connecting with me, connecting with spirit. If I can be in nature during that time, I will. And then returning to that toward the end of the day just kind of holds my day, right?
Yeah.
In a sacred container, and reminds me to pay attention to that, because I do, like all humans, get lost in the activities of the day and get stressed sometimes by how many details are coming and too much information. And things to juggle. And so it really helps me to, at least begin and end my day with some of that connection time. And if I can get some of that in the middle of the day, so much the better. So I'm really moving in a direction of definitely spending more and more time just fostering that connection and that mindfulness, and less time rushing around in a busy way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just finding that it continues to be a challenge to my health to rush and inevitably disconnect in that way. So I don't really like to feel that disconnection much at all anymore.
Yeah.
And I've become much more sensitive to it, for better or worse. I mean, I think it's for the better, but it does mean that I am struggling a little bit with not wanting to offer maybe as many things as I used to. So
Mm-hmm.
less is more,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit less, but of higher, more present quality.
Sounds like a good mixture.
Well, it keeps me saner and healthier and more centered. And I realize sometimes that, I am offering a lot. I share all the spaces I live in, and
Yes.
and so I do need protection time as well. And yet, if I can master bringing that into the everyday, then I don't need to retreat fearfully. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's very important what you're saying. I think it'll be very interesting to a lot of people that are listening to this. And I would like to actually just go back to something that maybe we covered a little bit, but maybe go into it a little bit more. But what do you think are some of the main mistakes people make on a raw food journey, or what are the things that you think are like misconceptions or ideas that people kind of pick up, but it's not quite accurate about it?
Mm-hmm. That's a big question. There's a lot of directions I could take, but like I said, one of the most important things I try to help people with is to get centered in themselves, because if we can do that and start there, then they have a much better platform for evaluating all the information that's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
All that they're learning and reading, and, should I do organics or non-organics? Should I take supplements or not? Which supplements? Should I go, high fruit, or is too much fruit, and all those kinds of things that they have to evaluate. So helping people get the tools to see what it means to be grounded and centered is firstly, I think, a good place to start, because there's going to be a lot of conflicting information, and they're going to have to find out how to handle it. And, I don't really want it all to be coming from me either, because I don't know the end all be all answer on everything. And people need to gain the confidence to do their own research at some level, and to do their own listening in their body and in their mind for what makes sense.
Yeah.
And what connects up with what else they've learned, right? And obviously we're all going to have to experiment a little, but I think one of the mistakes people make is becoming information junkies before they're even grounded in themselves.
Wow.
Right? So just trying to run from one information to the next. And another mistake people make is is continuing to veer onto another path and another path and another path, and they don't give it any chance to settle in. So they try something, 80-10-10 or whatever, and then at the first obstacle they ditch it and go somewhere else, and they haven't really stayed with it long enough to see where it's really going.
Yes.
So that's one of the mistakes people make, is by jumping around too much. And one of the reasons people do that is because they're not grounded. So back full circle to finding ways to be grounded, so that you can assess the information that's coming in from an intelligent place.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Ellen. Thank you very much. And we've went over an hour in this interview, and I think there's a lot more that we could speak about, but maybe we could cover it another time.
Yeah, this
I
has been
think,
great. And I think, I mean, I would love to leave listeners with that kind of
sure.
sense of, I really believe in everybody. I just have this deep-seated belief in every person I ever meet, that they have the power to access their own innate wisdom, and
Hmm.
that it's all there. Everything, they need in terms of the capacity to understand what is needed and what is needed in their life is there waiting for them to um, get quiet enough and tap in deep enough to hear it and know it. And that's your greatest um, let's see, asset, really, is that you already have it. And we all can read and learn and go to educators and try to figure things out, and that's important too. But ultimately, that deeper wisdom needs to kick in at some point to help you make sense of all the options out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I want to, I think it would be great. We can go over some more. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening will maybe request another interview sometime. What I want to tell everyone who's listening is that this is the Love Fruit podcast. It's for people that are interested in raw vegan, fruitarian type diets, and even just people that love fruit or are interested in health issues. And if you're interested in learning about a raw vegan diet, there is the UK Fruitfest, which is essentially what I work on. And you can learn more about that at fruitfest.co.uk. And that's an event that happens in the UK each year. And also, Ellen, how do we hear more about you and learn more about what you're doing and the different things and maybe events that you're going to be at this year?
Thank you. I hope to make it to the UK Raw Fruit Fest one of these days. My partner's mother lives in London and on a houseboat, and we have plans to get there one day. So I will be at the Woodstock Fruit Festival again this summer, and my website is ellenlivingston.com.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty easy. And there you can find information about my Costa Rica retreats. I still need to update the dates for next winter, but it's basically the first week of February, the first 2 weeks if you come on the second part. So that's the Costa Rica retreat. I'm generally open for one-on-one mentoring. And so the way to find out about that a little more deeply is just to email me, ellen@ellenlivingston.com, and let me know that you'd like a complimentary 1 hour initial session. And that's, I offer that to anybody who's interested in, exploring the possibility of a one-on-one mentoring relationship. And my books and DVDs, so I have some talks from Woodstock and a yoga DVD and a recipe DVD and my raw food handbook are all at my website under the products or shop page. So that's how you can learn about me. And I look forward to hearing people. I'm on email every day, so please let me know who you are and a little bit about your journey, and maybe we can connect by phone.
Thank you very much, Ellen, and everyone. I'm sure you'll want to share this with other people that might be interested in it, and check out Ellen's work. And I've been at a lot of Ellen's talks as well. And yeah, it would be great to make it work for you to come to the Fruit Festival, and just let us know when that would be good for you, and we'll try and work something out. And
in the meantime, I look forward to seeing you, Ronnie, at Woodstock this summer, right?
I'll be back at Woodstock. Yeah, I've been there many times and participated in. In fact, I'm always a bit scared of yoga. I remember I went to the second year I went to Woodstock. I went to one of your classes, and I'd been at like a year raw at that point. I think, yeah, just about a year, and I was still, maybe I wasn't doing the diet quite right. I'm not sure, but I was still like. At that point, I was experiencing some fatigue, and I wasn't feeling like I was going through a period of, I don't know what was happening, but I was quite tired at the time. I just remember your class being really tough for me because I was really I was like struggling, and it's not like it was the most intense fitness class, but it was. I remember it being quite intense for me at the time, but I'll probably need to come back and try it again.
Well, I always welcome everyone in the yoga classes to take it at their own pace and to just lie on the floor the whole time and be in the environment if they like. So we include everybody at all levels.
Yeah, and you're definitely a favorite speaker for a lot of people there, and yeah, I've sat in and learned a lot from you as well. But I look forward to learning more, and
I always look forward to your music at the talent shows at Woodstock.
oh well, thank you very much. Yeah, yeah. I look forward to that as well. So thank you very much, Ellen, and
Thanks,
for everyone watching. Find out more. Certainly look up her retreats and the Woodstock Festival. These are absolutely life-changing experiences, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Thank you very much for listening.